The moment Sharon Hendricks from the Pine Valley Estates HOA board heard I'd purchased the old Whitmore property at 847 Riverside Lane, she practically fell out of her designer chair laughing. I know this because my realtor told me she'd actually called him back 3 times, just to confirm that someone had genuinely paid money for what she called that rotting eyesore. I'm Vincent Morrison, and I just dropped $200,000 on what most people in this upscale Sacramento neighborhood considered a condemned disaster. The house had been abandoned for nearly 15 years after the original owner, an eccentric art collector named Theodore Whitmore, had passed away without any living relatives. The estate had gotten tangled up in legal proceedings for years, then sat vacant while various investors looked at it and walked away. The roof sagged in the middle, the windows were either broken or boarded up, and the yard looked like something from a horror movie. Wild blackberry bushes had consumed the front fence, and the grass reached waist height in some places. But I saw something nobody else did. I'm a restoration architect by trade, and I'd spent 3 months researching this property before making my offer. The Whitmore house wasn't just any old abandoned building. It was designed in 1928 by Julia Morgan, the same architect who created Hearst Castle. The bones of this place were extraordinary. Hand-carved woodwork, original stained glass windows hidden behind those boards, a foundation built to last centuries. Under all that decay was a masterpiece waiting to be reborn. Sharon didn't see it that way. 3 days after I closed on the property, she showed up at my door with a clipboard, her blonde, highlighted hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, and lips pursed like she'd been sucking on lemons all morning. "Mr. Morrison," she said, not even bothering with a hello. "I'm here to inform you that Pine Valley Estates has very strict guidelines regarding property maintenance. This monstrosity you've purchased is in violation of approximately 47 different HOA regulations." I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I'd been inside all morning, carefully documenting the existing conditions and taking measurements. "Nice to meet you too, Sharon. I'm Vincent. And yes, I'm well aware of the property's current condition. That's why I bought it." She thrust a thick stack of papers at me. "These are the citations. You have 30 days to bring the property into compliance or face daily fines of $500. I flipped through the papers. She wasn't kidding. Everything from excessive vegetation to peeling exterior paint to broken or missing windows was listed. "Sharon, I'm a professional. I have a comprehensive restoration plan that's been approved by the city's Historical Preservation Society. This house is a designated landmark. I don't care if it's the Taj Mahal," she snapped. "It's dragging down property values in this neighborhood by an estimated 12%. My own home appraisal came back $20,000 lower than expected because of your property." "That's not how property values work," I said, trying to keep my patience. "And I just bought this place. Give me some time. 30 days. She turned on her heel and marched back to her silver Lexus SUV, which she'd parked blocking half my driveway. I looked down at the citations and sighed. This was going to be interesting. The next morning, I hired a crew to start clearing the yard. The vegetation removal alone took 3 full days. We hauled away 7 truckloads of blackberry bushes, dead trees, and overgrown shrubs. Underneath all that growth, we discovered the original stone pathway leading to the front door, made from hand-cut Sacramento granite. We also found a dry fountain that just needed cleaning and a new pump to be operational again. Sharon drove by at least twice a day, slowing down to inspect our progress. On the 4th day, she actually pulled over and got out of her car. "The yard looks better," she admitted grudgingly. But that house is still a disaster. You'll never get it fixed up in 30 days. I'm not trying to fix it up in 30 days, I explained. I'm restoring it properly. This is a Julia Morgan design. Do you know what that means? She crossed her arms. I know what it means that every other house on this street is worth $700,000 to $1 million, and yours looks like it should be demolished. Just watch, I said. In a year, this place will be the crown jewel of Pine Valley Estates. She actually laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full, mocking laugh. A year? Honey, this dump would need a miracle and about $3 million to even be livable. Face it, you made a terrible investment. The smart thing would be to bulldoze it and start over. That comment made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. I'll make you a bet. When I'm done with this restoration, this house will be featured in Architectural Digest, and it'll be worth more than any property in Sacramento County. Sharon laughed even harder. More than any property? You mean more than the governor's mansion? Dream on. She climbed back into her Lexus, still chuckling. I got back to work. The first major project was the roof. I brought in a specialty contractor who understood historical roofing techniques. We replaced it with period-appropriate Spanish clay tiles, sourced from a supplier in Southern California, who still made them using traditional methods. The cost was astronomical, but the result was stunning. That sagging, moss-covered disaster became a gorgeous crown of terracotta that glowed in the afternoon sun. Next came the windows. Those boarded-up openings hid incredible treasures. 17 of the original stained glass windows were intact, featuring intricate designs of California poppies and oak trees. I sent them to a restoration specialist in San Francisco, who spent 3 months carefully repairing and cleaning each panel. The broken windows were replaced with custom-made replicas based on period photographs I'd found in the Sacramento Historical Society archives. Sharon wasn't my only problem. The HOA board meetings became entertainment for the neighborhood. I started attending after Sharon cited me for having construction equipment parked in my driveway overnight. At my first meeting, held in the Pine Valley Estates Community Center, I walked into a room full of hostile faces. "Mr. Morrison, how nice of you to join us," Sharon said from her position at the head table. Next to her sat Patricia Chen, the HOA treasurer, and Robert Dalton, the vice president. "We were just discussing your property." "I gathered that," I said, taking a seat in the folding chairs set up for residents. "The board has received 17 complaints about your construction activities," Patricia said, adjusting her glasses. "Noise before 8 a.m., trucks blocking the street, debris in your yard." "I've been following all city noise ordinances," I countered. "Construction starts at 7:30 a.m., which is legal. The trucks sometimes need to park on the street for deliveries, but never for more than an hour. And any debris gets hauled away within 24 hours. "The rules are the rules," Sharon said. "We've discussed it, and the board has decided to fine you $1,000 per incident." "That's $17,000. I stood up. "You can't be serious. I haven't actually violated any HOA rules." "Your covenants don't prohibit construction or renovation." Robert spoke up for the first time. "They prohibit activities that create a nuisance for neighbors." "Who complained?" I asked. "I'd like to speak with them directly." Sharon's face flushed. "That's confidential." "Actually, under California law, HOA records are available to homeowners. I have a right to see those complaints." The room went silent. Patricia and Robert exchanged glances. Sharon's jaw clenched. "Fine," she finally said. "You can review the complaints at our next board meeting." "But the fines stand." "Then I'll see you in court," I replied, "because I know my rights and you're overstepping yours." I left the meeting and immediately called an attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. Her name was Jennifer Rhodes, and she'd come highly recommended by my realtor. "They're trying to bully you," Jennifer said after I explained the situation. "It's actually pretty common. HOA boards sometimes get drunk on power. The good news is you have a strong case. The bad news is fighting them will cost money and time." "I'm not backing down," I said. "I've put my whole savings into this restoration. Then let's file a response and request arbitration and start documenting everything. Every interaction, every citation, every conversation. If they're harassing you, we need proof." The harassment got worse before it got better. Sharon started doing property inspections twice a week, always finding some new violation to cite. My grass was a quarter-inch too tall. I'd left a paint can visible through a window. A contractor's truck had leaked a drop of oil on my driveway. Each citation came with a fine ranging from $200 to $500, but I kept working. I brought in a master carpenter from Portland who specialized in historic preservation. Together, we restored the interior woodwork, carefully stripping away decades of dirt and grime to reveal gorgeous old-growth redwood paneling, hand-carved crown molding, and built-in bookcases with decorative details that took my breath away. We found the original hardwood floors under layers of disgusting carpet, and after sanding and refinishing, they gleamed like honey. The kitchen was a disaster zone, but underneath the 70s era renovations, we discovered the original 1928 layout. I worked with a designer to create a space that honored the home's period character while incorporating modern appliances and functionality. We used Carrara marble countertops, a farmhouse sink, and custom cabinets built to match the style of the rest of the house. The centerpiece was a restored vintage stove I'd found at a salvage yard in Oakland, a 6-burner beauty from the 1920s that had been completely rebuilt. 6 months into the project, something unexpected happened. A writer from Sacramento magazine stopped by. She'd heard about the restoration through the Historical Society and wanted to do a feature story. Her name was Bethany Ellis, and she showed up on a Tuesday morning with a photographer and genuine enthusiasm. "Oh my God," she said, stepping into the entry hall. "This is incredible. The stained glass, the woodwork, this is like stepping back in time." I gave her a complete tour, explaining every detail of the restoration process, the research that had gone into making authentic choices, and the incredible craftsmanship of the original construction. "Julia Morgan was a genius," I said, showing her the built-in window seats in the library. "Look at how she designed these to catch the afternoon light. Every detail was intentional." Bethany took notes furiously. "And the HOA has been fighting you this whole time." I'd mentioned the citations. "Sharon Hendricks has made this project much harder than it needed to be. She's more interested in cookie-cutter suburban conformity than preserving architectural heritage." "Would she talk to me?" Bethany asked. "Probably. She loves attention." The article ran 6 weeks later with the headline, "A Hidden Gem. Architect Resurrects Julia Morgan Masterpiece Despite HOA Opposition." It was fantastic publicity, complete with before and after photos that showed the transformation. Bethany had even dug up historical photos of the house from 1928, showing how closely my restoration matched the original vision. Sharon was quoted in the article saying, "While we appreciate historical preservation, homeowners in Pine Valley estates have a responsibility to their neighbors to maintain certain standards." She somehow managed to make my beautiful restoration sound like a neighborhood blight. But the article changed everything. Suddenly, I had people driving by daily to see the house. Architecture students asked for tours. the Sacramento Historical Society invited me to give a presentation. And real estate agents started calling, asking if I'd consider selling once the restoration was complete. "I've got a client who would pay $2 million sight unseen," one agent told me. "Not interested in selling," I replied. "I'm planning to live here." The restoration took 14 months total. Every room was carefully brought back to its original glory while being updated for modern living. The 4 bedrooms upstairs featured restored original light fixtures, refinished floors, and period-appropriate paint colors I'd researched through historical paint analysis. The bathrooms were gutted and rebuilt with vintage-style fixtures that looked authentic but offered modern functionality. The library became my favorite room. Floor-to-ceiling built-in bookshelves in rich redwood, a working fireplace with original tile work, and those incredible window seats where afternoon light streamed through stained glass windows depicting California landscapes. Outside, I restored the gardens based on original landscape plans I'd found in Theodore Whitmore's estate papers. We planted rose gardens, installed a working fountain, and created stone pathways that meandered through carefully planned spaces. The backyard featured a pergola covered in wisteria, a stone patio perfect for entertaining, and raised garden beds where I planned to grow vegetables. The final touch was the exterior paint. I worked with a color consultant who specialized in historic homes to match the original 1928 color scheme. A warm cream body with sage green trim and terracotta accents that complemented the tile roof perfectly. When everything was finally complete, I hosted an open house for the neighborhood. I invited everyone in Pine Valley Estates, including the HOA board. I wanted them to see what I'd accomplished. About 50 people showed up, including Bethany Ellis from Sacramento Magazine and a reporter from the Sacramento Bee who'd heard about the project. Sharon arrived fashionably late, wearing a designer dress and her signature look of disapproval. People were amazed. I overheard conversations about the attention to detail, the incredible craftsmanship, and the historical authenticity. Several neighbors apologized for doubting the project. "I have to admit, Vincent, this is really something special," said Michael Patterson, who lived 3 doors down. "I thought you were crazy, but you've created something remarkable." Sharon walked through the house silently, her expression unreadable. She examined every room, every detail, but didn't say a word. As she was leaving, she finally spoke. "It's nice," she said flatly, "but you still owe the HOA approximately $43,000 in outstanding fines." I'd been expecting this. "Actually, Sharon, you'll be hearing from my attorney about those fines. Every single one was issued improperly, and we're seeking full dismissal plus legal fees." Her face went red. "We have every right to enforce our covenants. You have the right to enforce legitimate rules. You don't have the right to harass homeowners who haven't violated anything. See you in arbitration." She stormed out, and I went back to enjoying my open house. The arbitration hearing took place 3 months later. Jennifer Rhodes had built an airtight case. She documented every citation, cross-referenced each one with the actual HOA covenants, and demonstrated a clear pattern of harassment. She even brought in testimony from other Pine Valley Estates residents who'd witnessed Sharon's behavior. The arbitrator, a retired judge named Harold Simmons, reviewed everything carefully. Sharon sat across the table with her own attorney, looking confident until Jennifer started presenting evidence. "Let's look at citation number 17, Jennifer said. "Mrs. Hendricks cited Mr. Morrison for having paint cans visible through a window. Can you show me where in the Pine Valley Estates covenants this is prohibited?" Sharon's attorney shuffled papers. It falls under general property maintenance standards. That section refers to exterior maintenance, Jennifer countered. It says nothing about what's visible through windows inside a private residence. That would be a violation of privacy rights. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, even Sharon looked defeated. Judge Simmons issued his ruling 2 weeks later. All fines were dismissed. The HOA was ordered to pay my legal fees, totaling $18,000. And he issued a permanent injunction preventing the HOA from issuing any citations against my property without documented proof of actual covenant violations. The board has clearly overstepped its authority in this matter, Judge Simmons wrote in his decision. HOA powers exist to maintain community standards, not to harass individual homeowners or prevent legitimate property improvements. The board's actions toward Mr. Morrison were inappropriate and legally unsupportable. I framed that decision and hung it in my library. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months after the arbitration ruling, I got a call from a producer at HGTV. They'd seen the Sacramento magazine article and wanted to feature my restoration on a show about historic home preservation. "This is exactly the kind of project we love," the producer, Amanda Wright, told me during our initial phone call. A lone architect taking on a massive restoration against all odds, fighting the HOA, bringing a masterpiece back to life. It's perfect television. They filmed over 3 days, interviewing me about the process, documenting every room and, yes, interviewing Sharon Hendricks. She tried to spin the story in her favor, talking about property values and community standards, but the editing made it clear she'd been the villain of the piece. The episode aired 6 months later, and it was a sensation. Millions of people watched the transformation of the Whitmore house from abandoned disaster to Julia Morgan masterpiece. My phone rang constantly with media requests, speaking invitations, and potential clients wanting similar restorations. Then something truly unexpected happened. A curator from the Smithsonian American Art Museum reached out. Theodore Whitmore, the home's original owner, had been a significant art collector in the 1920s and 30s. When he died, his collection was supposed to have been sold off, but there were rumors that he'd hidden some pieces in the house itself. "We've been trying to locate several works for decades," Dr. Elizabeth Morgan told me during a visit. "If there's any chance they are still in the house, it would be a major discovery." We searched together. Dr. Morgan brought ground-penetrating radar equipment and specialists in hidden compartments. For weeks, we found nothing. Then one evening, I was sitting in the library, running my hand along the bookshelf molding, when I felt something odd. A decorative rosette that looked like it was carved into the wood actually moved slightly when I pressed it. I pushed harder and heard a click. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a hidden room about 10 feet square. Inside were 17 paintings. Works by Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, and several other significant Mexican and California artists from the early 20th century. Dr. Morgan nearly fainted when she saw them. "Do you have any idea what these are worth?" she asked, her voice shaking. "A lot," I guessed. "Try $50 to $70 million. Theodore Whitmore hid his most valuable pieces. These have been missing since his death in 1997. The discovery made international news. The New York Times, BBC, CNN, everyone covered the story of the abandoned house that hid an art collection worth tens of millions. As Theodore Whitmore's legal heir through the property purchase and estate settlement, the collection belonged to me. I worked with auction houses and museums to properly authenticate and document everything. Some pieces went to museums through negotiated sales. Others went to private collectors through Sotheby's. When all was said and done, I'd netted $63 million after taxes and fees. But I didn't forget about the house. I invested $2 million into additional improvements. I added climate control systems to protect the historic fabric, upgraded the security with state-of-the-art but hidden technology, and created a small gallery space in the hidden room where I displayed rotating exhibitions of California art. The property valuations started coming in. Real estate experts estimated the home's value at somewhere between $12 and $15 million, based on its historical significance, perfect restoration, incredible provenance, and the publicity surrounding the art discovery. That made it officially worth more than any residential property in Sacramento County. The governor's mansion, a beautiful Victorian built in 1877, was valued at around $8 million. The most expensive private estates in the area topped out around $10 million. My house was worth more than all of them. A year after the HGTV episode aired, Architectural Digest did a 12-page spread on the restoration. The photos were gorgeous, showing every detail of the work. They called it one of the most significant residential restorations in California history. I invited the whole Pine Valley Estates community for a celebration when the magazine came out. This time, nearly 200 people showed up. News crews covered the event. The mayor of Sacramento gave a speech about the importance of historic preservation. The State Historical Society presented me with an award. Sharon Hendricks came too. She'd resigned from the HOA board 6 months earlier after the arbitration ruling. The other board members had forced her out, worried about additional legal liability. She'd mostly kept to herself since then. She approached me near the end of the evening, looking uncomfortable. "Vincent, I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I was wrong about this house, about you. I let my own narrow vision of what this neighborhood should look like blind me to something truly special. What you've accomplished here is remarkable. I appreciated the apology, even if it came late. Thank you, Sharon. That means a lot. For what it's worth, my house sold last month for $900,000. The realtor said being near your property actually increased its value by about 15%, so I guess I owe you for that too." We shook hands and she left. I stood on my front porch that evening, looking at the house that had consumed nearly 2 years of my life. The warm glow from the stained glass windows, the elegant lines of the architecture, the carefully restored details, it was everything I'd envisioned and more. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Rhodes, my attorney. "Just saw the AD spread. Congratulations. You did it." I had done it. Despite the mockery, the harassment, the citations, and the battles, I'd saved a masterpiece. The abandoned house that everyone laughed at, that Sharon Hendricks thought should be demolished, was now worth more than the governor's mansion, more than any private residence in Sacramento County, and had helped rediscover a lost art collection worth tens of millions. The Whitmore house wasn't just my home anymore. It was a landmark, a piece of California history brought back to life, and living proof that sometimes the things other people overlook hold the greatest value. I went inside, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in my library surrounded by restored redwood paneling and the warm glow of period-appropriate lighting. Through the stained glass windows, the evening sun cast colored patterns across the floor. This was home. The next morning, I woke up to find a film crew from CBS Sunday Morning parked outside. They wanted to do a segment on the house for their show. I made coffee, reviewed my schedule, and agreed to film later that week. Life had changed dramatically. I'd started a consulting business specializing in historic restoration. Clients from across California reached out, wanting me to work on their projects. I hired a team of specialists, including that master carpenter from Portland and the window restoration expert from San Francisco. We took on projects ranging from small Victorian cottages to grand estates, always focusing on authentic preservation. But the Whitmore house remained my headquarters and my home. I converted one of the upstairs bedrooms into an office where I met with clients. The library hosted small gatherings of architects, historians, and preservationists. The hidden gallery space showcased rotating exhibitions of local artists, continuing Theodore Whitmore's legacy of supporting the arts. Pine Valley Estates changed too. The HOA elected new leadership focused on supporting property improvements rather than mindlessly enforcing conformity. They actually amended the covenants to include protections for historic properties and to create a review process that couldn't be abused. Several neighbors started their own renovation projects, inspired by what I'd accomplished. The Patterson family 3 doors down restored their 1940s ranch house with careful attention to period details. The Sandersons across the street updated their landscape with native California plants. The neighborhood became known for thoughtful stewardship rather than cookie-cutter sameness. I received dozens of speaking invitations. Universities wanted me to lecture architecture students about adaptive reuse and historic preservation. Historical societies invited me to keynote their conferences. I spoke at the National Trust for Historic Preservation annual meeting in Chicago, telling the story of the Whitmore House to an audience of 2,000 preservation professionals who gave me a standing ovation. The financial success from the art discovery allowed me to establish the Whitmore Foundation for Architectural Preservation. We provided grants to homeowners undertaking historically sensitive restorations, funded research into lost California architects, and supported education programs teaching traditional building crafts. 6 months after the CBS Sunday Morning piece aired, I got an unexpected visitor. A woman in her 70s rang my doorbell on a Wednesday afternoon. Her name was Margaret Whitmore Richardson. "I'm Theodore Whitmore's niece," she explained. "I was told the family had no living relatives, but that's not quite true. I was estranged from my uncle for many years over a family dispute. When he died, I didn't contest the estate because I felt I'd lost my right to it, but I wanted to see what you've done with his house." I invited her in and gave her a complete tour. She cried when she saw the restored library. "I spent so many summers here as a child," she said, touching the redwood paneling. "Uncle Theodore would let me curl up in those window seats and read for hours. When I heard the house had been abandoned, it broke my heart. Thank you for bringing it back." We talked for 3 hours. Margaret shared stories about her uncle, his passion for art and architecture, his friendships with artists and intellectuals of his era. She told me about parties that had been held in this house, where Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo had actually visited during a 1930 California trip. "Uncle Theodore hid the art collection during World War II, she explained. "He was worried about potential seizures or bombing, even though that was unlikely in California. He'd built that hidden room specifically for his most precious pieces." After the war, he became increasingly reclusive and paranoid. "I think he forgot to tell anyone about the collection before he died. The pieces have gone to good homes," I assured her. "Museums and collectors who will preserve them." Margaret became a regular visitor. She helped me research the house's history, provided family photographs and documents, and shared memories that added depth to my understanding of the property. We co-authored an article for the Journal of the Society of Architectural Historians about Julia Morgan's residential work in Sacramento. 2 years after completing the restoration, the American Institute of Architects gave the project their prestigious 25-year award, typically reserved for buildings that have proven their excellence over time. They made an exception, recognizing the historical significance and quality of the restoration work. I accepted the award at a ceremony in Washington, D.C., with Margaret as my guest. The property valuations kept climbing. As the house gained fame, as more articles were written and more television features aired, real estate experts revised their estimates upward. By 2024, the Whitmore house was appraised at $18 million, a value driven by its historical significance, architectural merit, celebrity status, and the incredible story behind it. That made it worth more than many famous estates, more than most celebrity homes in California. And yes, significantly more than the White House, which as government property is typically valued based on its real estate fundamentals rather than its symbolic importance. Financial experts estimated the White House's actual real estate value at around $400 million based on location and size. But as a historic house property in terms of residential market comparables, my restoration had achieved something remarkable. Sharon Hendricks sent me a card after the AIA award ceremony. "Congratulations on proving me spectacularly wrong," she wrote. "Your vision and determination saved something irreplaceable. I'm sorry I couldn't see it at the time." I appreciated her continued growth. She'd actually become an advocate for historic preservation in Sacramento, serving on the city's historical commission and pushing for stronger protections for historic properties. People can change, and Sharon had proven it. My consulting business thrived. We completed 17 major restoration projects across California, each one breathing new life into a historic property that might otherwise have been demolished or insensitively remodeled. We saved a 1905 Craftsman in Oakland, a 1890 Victorian in San Francisco, a 1925 Spanish colonial revival in Santa Barbara, and many others. Each project honored the past while creating functional spaces for modern living, but nothing matched the Whitmore house. It remained my masterpiece, my home, and my daily reminder that conventional wisdom isn't always wise. When everyone laughs at your vision, when authorities try to stop you, when the path forward seems impossible sometimes, that's when you're onto something truly special. I hosted one final celebration 5 years after purchasing the property. A reunion of everyone who'd been part of the journey, the construction crews who'd done such incredible work. Jennifer Rhodes, the attorney who'd fought the HOA. Bethany Ellis, whose magazine article had started the publicity snowball. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan from the Smithsonian. Margaret Whitmore Richardson, my architecture team, supportive neighbors, even Sharon Hendricks. We filled the house and gardens with over 300 guests. I'd hired caterers, a jazz band, and set up a projection screen in the backyard showing before and after photos of the restoration. As the sun set and the stained glass windows glowed with interior light, I raised a glass. 5 years ago, I bought an abandoned house that everyone thought was worthless, I said. I was laughed at, fought against, and told I was wasting my money. But I saw something others didn't. I saw a Julia Morgan masterpiece waiting to be saved. Thank you to everyone who believed in this vision, who contributed your skills and expertise, and who helped prove that passion and perseverance can overcome any obstacle. This house stands as testament to the importance of preservation, the value of craftsmanship, and the truth that beauty and history are worth fighting for. The crowd applauded. The band played. People danced on my stone patio under strings of lights as the evening turned to night. I stood on my porch, looking out at the scene, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The abandoned house that inspired mockery had become a beacon of possibility. It had launched my career, established a foundation supporting preservation work, helped rediscover lost art worth millions, and created a gathering place for people who valued history and beauty. Most importantly, it had become a home filled with warmth, light, and life. The HOA that had tried so hard to stop me had inadvertently made the story better. Their opposition, their citations, their harassment, all of it had become part of the narrative that made the restoration even more compelling. Sharon's laughter when I bought the property echoed in my memory, a reminder of how wrong conventional thinking can be. I walked through my house that night after the last guests had left, through the entry hall with its restored stained glass, through the library with redwood paneling glowing in lamplight, through the kitchen where modern function met historic charm, up the stairs with their hand-carved balustrade, into bedrooms where period details had been lovingly preserved. This house was worth more than money could measure. It was worth more than any appraisal or market estimate. It was a piece of California history saved from destruction, a work of art restored to glory, and a home filled with meaning and purpose. The journey from abandoned disaster to architectural treasure had been long, expensive, and exhausting. But standing in my library that night, I wouldn't have changed a single moment. Every obstacle had been worth overcoming. Every dollar had been worth spending. Every hour had been worth investing. The Whitmore house was more than a structure of wood, stone, and glass. It was proof that vision trumps convention, that persistence overcomes opposition, and that sometimes the things everyone else overlooks hold the greatest treasures. I made coffee the next morning and sat in my breakfast nook, reading messages from guests thanking me for the party. The morning sun streamed through original stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across my table. Birds sang in the restored gardens. It was peaceful, beautiful, and exactly what I'd imagined during those early days of demolition and doubt. My phone rang. Another potential client wanting help with a historic property restoration. Another opportunity to save a piece of architectural heritage. I smiled and answered. This was my calling now, this work of preservation and restoration, and it had all started with one abandoned house and the refusal to accept everyone else's limitations. The Pine Valley Estates HOA had laughed when I bought this property. Now they bragged about it to prospective residents, using photos of my house in their marketing materials. The transformation was complete, not just of the house, but of the entire community's understanding of what was possible. I finished my coffee and headed to my office for a day of design work. Outside my window, the Whitmore house stood proud and beautiful, its Spanish tile roof gleaming in the morning sun, its stained glass windows catching the light, its gardens blooming with roses and native plants. This house, once abandoned and forgotten, once laughed at and dismissed, had become more valuable than anyone imagined possible. Not just in dollars, though its $18 million appraisal certainly proved the financial success of the restoration, but valuable in its demonstration that beauty, history, and craftsmanship matter. That architecture can tell stories, preserve heritage, and inspire communities. The journey had taught me that the most meaningful achievements often come when you pursue a vision others can't see. When you stand firm against opposition and trust your expertise even when surrounded by doubt. When you're willing to invest everything money, time, energy, reputation into something you believe in. Sharon Hendricks and the Pine Valley Estates HOA had done everything they could to stop me. They'd cited, fined, harassed, and obstructed. But their opposition had only strengthened my resolve and, ultimately, made the success story even more compelling. Sometimes your greatest obstacles become your best teachers. The abandoned house had hidden treasures beyond even my imaginings. The art collection discovery had been pure luck, but it validated the deeper truth I'd known from the beginning. This property held extraordinary value that others simply couldn't perceive. I've lived in the restored Whitmore house for 3 years now. Every single day, I notice some detail that brings me joy. The way afternoon light hits the stained glass, the feel of smooth redwood under my hand as I run it along the banister, the subtle perfection of crown molding that took a master craftsman weeks to restore. These details matter. They connect us to the past, to the craftspeople who created them, to the architect who designed them with such care. The house has been featured in 7 major publications, 3 television shows, and countless blogs and websites. Architecture students study it as an example of excellent restoration practice. The National Trust for Historic Preservation uses it in their educational materials. It's become a teaching tool, demonstrating how historic properties can be saved and adapted for modern use while maintaining their essential character. But beyond all the publicity and recognition, beyond the awards and the property value, the Whitmore house is simply a wonderful place to live. It's comfortable, beautiful, and filled with positive energy. Friends love visiting. Dinner parties in the formal dining room are elegant affairs. Sunday mornings reading in the library window seats are pure contentment. This house nurtures and inspires everyone who enters it. The foundation I established has grown beyond my initial expectations. We've provided grants supporting 43 restoration projects across California. We've funded scholarships for students studying historic preservation. We've documented endangered historic properties and advocated for their protection. The work continues, supported by the unexpected windfall from the art discovery, but driven by a genuine passion for saving architectural heritage. Margaret Whitmore Richardson has become a close friend and collaborator. Her memories and family documents have enriched my understanding of the house and its history. She's writing a book about her Uncle Theodore and his circle of artists and intellectuals, using the house as a central character in the story. I've contributed photographs and architectural documentation to support her research. Real estate agents still call regularly, representing clients willing to pay premium prices for the property. I always decline. This house isn't for sale. It's my home, my headquarters, and my life's work made manifest. No amount of money could convince me to part with it. The neighborhood has continued to evolve positively. Property values throughout Pine Valley estates have risen, partly due to the attention my restoration brought to the area. The HOA operates more professionally now, with leadership that understands the difference between maintaining standards and stifling individual creativity. It's become a community that values both cooperation and personal expression, finding balance where before there was only rigid conformity. I sometimes think about that first day, standing in front of the abandoned property with my realtor, looking at the overgrown yard and sagging roof while he tried to talk me out of making an offer. I think about Sharon's mocking laughter when she heard I'd actually bought it. I think about those early mornings starting demolition work, clearing away decades of neglect to reveal the treasures beneath. Every step of that journey was necessary. Every challenge made the final result more meaningful. The obstacles weren't impediments to success. They were integral parts of the success story. The Whitmore house stands now as it was meant to stand, proud, beautiful, and purposeful. A Julia Morgan masterpiece restored to its full glory. a home filled with life and warmth, a landmark that educates and inspires. And yes, a property worth more than the president's home by any reasonable residential real estate comparison, though that was never really the point. The point was always about vision, about seeing potential where others saw only problems, about having the courage to pursue what you believe in despite opposition and mockery, about understanding that some things, beauty, history, craftsmanship, architectural heritage, are worth fighting for regardless of what others think. I succeeded not because I was smarter or richer than everyone else, but because I truly saw what this property could become and refused to let obstacles stop me from realizing that vision. The HOA's laughter became motivation. Their citations became challenges to overcome. Their harassment became part of a story that ultimately demonstrated the importance of standing firm in your convictions. Every day I live in this house is a victory. Not over the HOA, though winning that battle was satisfying, but a victory for preservation, for architecture, for beauty, and for the principle that individual vision and determination can overcome institutional opposition and conventional thinking. The abandoned house that inspired mockery became the crown jewel of Sacramento residential architecture. The disaster that everyone wanted demolished became an internationally recognized masterpiece. The property that dragged down neighborhood values became the most valuable residence in the county. And the architect that Sharon Hendricks laughed at became the person who proved that sometimes, just sometimes, the dreamer who sees what others cannot is the one who changes everything. As I sit here in my library on this quiet evening, surrounded by the beauty I helped restore, I'm grateful for every moment of the journey. Grateful for the opposition that made me stronger. Grateful for the supporters who believed in the vision. Grateful for the house itself, for surviving 15 years of abandonment and waiting for someone to recognize its value. The Whitmore house was always a masterpiece. It just needed someone willing to do the work to prove it. And in doing that work, in fighting those battles, in overcoming those obstacles, I found my own purpose and calling. This restoration launched a career, established a foundation, saved many other historic properties, and changed how an entire community thinks about architectural heritage. Not bad for an abandoned house that everyone thought was worthless. Not bad at all for a dream that everyone laughed at. The joke, as it turned out, was on those who couldn't see past the surface decay to the extraordinary value beneath. And the punchline is $18 million worth of restored beauty that stands as living proof that vision, passion, and persistence can transform anything.